so glad you're here. So tell the humans, who are you? Who's Jamie?
Oh goodness, that's such a broad question.
Yeah, you're like, that's an evolving thing, actually.
Yeah. So I am a human who's becoming a life coach again, somebody who is walking closer with God because of all of the wonderful Courage Go programs that Juliana offers.
Oh,
And I live in a little tiny house in the woods sometimes and travel a lot. And I'm just really excited to be in this space sharing a little bit of my journey of what that's looked like, and making different connections as I have gone through life and being able to share that with all of you guys.
I love. So you're saying too that you're becoming a life coach again. So make that make sense for people because that might actually ring true for a lot of people. They're like, wait a minute, I thought I was one, but am I doing it again? Am I investing in learning about this again? Like, what am I doing? So fill some people in on like what has happened there.
Sure. Um, my original, I have a degree in health, and wellness, basically, and I was doing personal training for a long time, and all of those sessions really just turned into life coaching sessions. I was actually just helping people as they were exercising figure out their life stuff, and I was like, maybe there's more to this. So that was really fun. And I was like, they don't really need, I mean, they need the exercise stuff, but they also need this support. Um, so fast forward a couple of years, I went to grad school, got out of grad school, um, worked in wilderness therapy for a while, and then I took a life coaching certification maybe uh, 4 years ago now.
Okay.
Um, that was a year-long program. It was really great. And I never really did anything with it because it felt like there were missing pieces where I wanted God to be included in it for one thing, and I couldn't see the vision of how to make that happen. Um, and so I learned a lot of good skills, but I never really put them into practice. And so I was always kind of standing in that gap between knowledge and actually doing something with the knowledge, which I think has been true for me for my entire life. I'm a
Hey,
collector of knowledge and never really stepping into the action piece, or maybe I just don't see myself doing that. So now I'm like, okay, I have this opportunity to do something where I'm going to learn new life coaching skills that also include God within them. And they're actually going to make that big impact on other humans' lives, which is really what we're going for is the actual transformation. Like, not that anything that I've learned before hasn't been transformational, but I have also gotten into the spot where I'm like, okay, but then how do you actually heal from this? Or how do you actually get to the point where you're content or enough is enough? Like, where does that change for you? And I feel like the skills that I've learned in SDS have kind of been that point. It's like when you add God into this and you're actually doing the work with him, that's when the transformation happens. That's when the change happens in a way that you can't experience in anything else.
yeah. Well, I love too, as you're sharing, right? Like I'm just smiling. So I'm like, okay, it's so fun because like people don't know you as this Jamie that you're describing, right? Like people don't know you as just like an information gatherer. Like they know you as like an implementer, right? It's like that's such a fun part. You run Good for Your Soul Sisters as a co-leader, right? Um,
Yes.
they've seen you actively in the mastermind. They've seen you in different programs in faith walking, right? Now they're seeing you in SDS. So like as far as they're concerned, you're an implementer, not just like an information gatherer. So I just
Right.
it's so fun to think like, oh well, you are, obviously now operating in your new identity. But when you get into a program, and I think it's so interesting, there are programs too that like can say they're spiritual, right? But how we talk about Jesus is different than spiritual, right? And then a program that starts with God as the baseline, right? Like God is the foundation. Like that's really rare to see. And that's like so different than just building something on biblical principle. Different. So tell
Absolutely.
me about that. Like when you're in there, because it sounds simplistic how you present it, right? You're like, you just put God in it and it all works out, which like is true. That is true. Like you're not wrong. But it's like, how does one arrive there? Because you're like, oh, great. Like that just sounds awesome. But like, how though? Do you know what I mean? So like, can you even put some context to like an example of how that started happening for you?
Sure. Let's see. So I
That's the thing
think,
with you too. Like even in the mastermind, like I felt like the mastermind was a pivotal piece for identity and relationship with God. So I do feel like that was in a way the healing piece, like the heart healing piece, the inner healing piece, the renewing of the mind, like processing things with God. Like a lot of that wheelhouse was getting worked, before you stepped into
yes.
SDS. So I do think that's part of it where it's like, okay, how do I make, well, one, like how do I even have a relationship with God? Like who am I in God? How do I connect with God or nurture a relationship with God? Like what am I experiencing because I'm doing that? Like that's all revealed in time. You know what I mean? As you keep
Mhm.
seeking, you know what I mean? It's like adjusting your seek. So I
Yes.
feel that we all have a weak seek. You know what I mean? We have to like
Yes.
developing a strong seek, right? Or strong pursuit of the Lord. So it's like as you pursue him, you start experiencing him more and recognizing him more. So I do feel like that was a huge thing that you were doing, even hearing you share about your experience there. And I'm wondering, has that changed somehow in the mastermind, or like what are some more things that you built on top of that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think with the identity piece, that's a good example because that's something a lot of people struggle with, right? And like if you've listened to other podcast episodes of me on here before,
Yeah.
like I've described myself as a chameleon, as somebody who like can fit in anywhere, and that is true. But
Yes.
now I have a stronger foundation and identity of who I am.
Yes.
So I'm I'm more likely to set boundaries around my time. I'm more likely to not let somebody's emotions take over my whole day. Where pre Courage Co, if somebody felt some kind of way, that would ruin my entire day. I would be like,
Mhm.
oh, I must help them. I must do this thing to make them feel better. And like, it didn't matter how I felt after that.
Yes.
And now I can fill from a place of overflow because I've had some healing pieces in that in the last 3 years, really,
So good.
where I've been able to step closer to God by actually reading my Bible, by spending time actually praying, learning how to pray and not just being like, Lord, thank you for this food. Not that there's anything wrong with that kind of prayer,
Yes.
but
Yes.
there's a deeper relationship that I knew existed, but I didn't know how to get there before I was in this space.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So now that you're in SDS, you've had experience of investing in yourself and you value that, which I think is really important, right? Like we're always growing, we're always evolving, we're always going to need more skills. And being a lifelong learner is such a blessing. So you've really embraced that. You have had a
Yes.
certification before, and now you're in a new one. Like, what do you love about what was happening in SDS that maybe was familiar, maybe was different entirely? Like, what was it that was really starting to strike you or pique your interest in there?
Yeah. So I think the things that are different about it is that like a lot of coaches claim that they have a small group setting, but then you get into it, it's like 50 or 100 people, and you're like, this is not actually small. Like I'm not actually
They're like,
communicating with
what do
the
you
person
mean?
I want to be in. So I appreciate that it really feels like a cohort and a community.
Mm.
Um, that there's time to connect. I love that we have the small group spaces to talk about anything that we want to share information in a different way. And it
Yeah.
also just gives a chance to practice those skills that we're learning in the program as well, which is huge. So you're actually like implementing it in kind of sneaky ways.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that maybe you wouldn't think of when you're signing up for it. You're like, oh, these things are all a part of it and this is going to be so great. But then it's kind of like, oh, now I'm in this small group space and I have to prepare this presentation, and now my speaking
Yes.
skills are getting better, and I didn't know this was a part of it.
It's so fun. That I think that's been one of my favorite parts is like revealing things to you guys in time. I'm like, it's coming. Do not freak out. Like, do not freak out. However, like, there's a presentation. You will be giving a presentation, and you all freak out. And I'm like, it's fine.
Yes.
Like this is
Yep.
all helping you, right? So I love what you're saying, right? Like, so there's this group session where you're meeting and connecting with people every week. And inevitably, when somebody shares something, you're learning an incredible amount from what they're sharing. Like, I'm even thinking about, like, a recent session that we've had where somebody's willing to share what they're working on. And the whole group is like, oh man, it's almost like a call to order. They're like, well, dude, if you've already done that, like, I need to level up my game. Like, there's a true camaraderie happening in there, a true championing of people and a collective breakthrough that happens. And that's just meeting once a week. But then you guys have a peer coach where you guys get to coach each other back and forth throughout the entire program. You have a peer group where you can dive deeper into what you're learning. And then you have the actual training itself. And then you have presentations and practical ways to implement these things too. So as you're going through this, what is that like experientially? Because I've defined this as an accelerator. Like it has been constructed with those people in mind that have been seeking and investing in themselves for a long period of time. So we're not at like ground one. Like that wouldn't be honoring or fair to be like, let's start from the beginning, you know? But it's like we are going to identify and clarify what excellent coaching looks like and what it looks like to be a masterful coach with integrity and with morals and standards of what this looks like. So that's huge. But we are going to take this to a very different level, right? And incorporate many elements. So for you going through, what is it like interacting with all of those elements?
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot, but it's also really great because just like any other program that is in Courage Co, you're always going to have some kind of nugget to take away from each thing. And I think what I've learned the most is that I don't have to take in all of the information or know everything. It's like, this is the thing that's going to be useful really moving forward for the vision that God gave me and the direction I want to go in versus like, I need to know all of these things or I'm going to lose them. Like that mindset shift for me going
Yeah.
through all of this stuff has been really huge.
I love
So I can like actually see what you've designed and what God's designed through you, and then put it into my own words and figure out how to put it into practice. So that's kind of like closing the gap for me right now between the
yeah.
knowing and the action piece. And
Love.
yeah, I think that that's just something to get to a spot where for anyone going through a program or especially SDS, because up front it can look like a lot, but it
Yeah.
has a really good natural flow and it's not actually that overwhelming if
Yeah.
you're, I mean, like I'm a kind of all over the place scheduler, but then I like
Yeah.
somehow come into organization.
Yeah.
So um,
I love.
it's been manageable. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. And it builds. Like it builds like so I almost look at it like it is an accelerator, right? That's that way to honor people that have been doing training for a long time. But it also could be for somebody that's never gone through a coach certification before either. So it's like whether you are a coach right now and you really want to keep God at the center, like that becomes abundantly clear from day one,
Mhm.
right? And we take that way deep, right? But then it's
Yes.
also like if you want to be a masterful coach, like you're not going to miss out. Like we teach that hardcore for like 2 months, right? So it's like there's a ton of teaching on that too, but it is accelerated. You're right. Like it's like okay, you guys want to move into this next thing in a fast way, but it's got to be in a mature way, and it's got to be in a way that you can really interact with and engage well with. So that experiential piece is a huge part of it's not something extra. This is how this all aligns. Some of you learn in a group setting, some of you learn in a one-on-one setting, some of you learn with a content, but when it all comes together, there is a higher likelihood of being like in this incubation window to actually soak it in and get it so that you can implement it. And so that like all of that is intentional, but it's so interesting because not many are used to that. They're used to like paying for something, sitting and like letting it sit. Right. But
Yes.
that's not how this is at all. It's like, okay, if you really want to be a coach, this is what it looks like. This is what's required. This is the training. These are the reps. Like, here's how you do this. Right. Like, this is
Mhm.
for real. So when you leave here, you're not like, now what? You know what I mean? It's like, and you're doing it already.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, being able to get to that spot where you recognize, oh, all of this practice is actually doing it,
Yes.
and I can step forward and actually make this practical in my life as well
Yes.
for lots of different things because the content is also healing for you as a coach, and it's just
100%.
like really good reminders of how to be an excellent coach.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I love to. So tell me how this has evolved your vision of what's next for you and what you're stepping into. Because I love how coaching just allows you to human better. You know what I mean? Like truly, I'm like, these are like the human life skills that you need in your life, but it's like you have to go seek them out because they're not just given, unfortunately. And we have so many people that are not from healthy mentorship, leadership, parenting, all of that. And so we're kind of just winging it. And it's like, you don't have to wing it actually, right? Even in a relationship with God, you're not winging it. God is not confused, right? So it's like when you start to partner with him and build with him, that changes how you coach as well. But what has this changed in your many year trek to even get to this stage? Like, how has this changed all that for you?
Yeah, well, I would also say that even if you grew up in a quote unquote healthy home, there's
Yeah,
so many skills that coaching can help with because we don't know everything. And even if we have a baseline of like mostly healthy, we can always get up to a level of just more empathy in life, healthier relationships, just a lot of different things that coaching can really help with.
totally.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, it's been a huge part of my life of learning and development, right? And I don't I feel very called to coaching. I don't know what else I would do. Like I said before, when I was personal training, I loved the health and fitness side of things, but really what I was being drawn into was helping people with what they were struggling with in their life or
Yes.
whatever those things were. So it's been like a natural trajectory for me to get here. And then um, I've been a Christian my whole life, but I haven't actually had the relationship with God that I now can step into. So combining
Mm.
both of those things together is kind of an unstoppable force, right?
Yeah. 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 Do you have a vision of how you will emerge with the new tools, the new skills, all of that? Like what's next? Is God showing that to you?
Yeah. So I have a vision for working with teenagers, and we're going to be working on leadership development skills, healthy relationships, just like all the baseline tools that you wish that your kid could get, and maybe help understand just life a little bit better to not have some of the pitfalls that maybe we've gone into or the
Yes.
experiences that we've had. So just help them up, set them up for a little bit more success in life. So that's kind of the direction that we're going in right now, creating courageous teens and
Yeah.
yeah, having a
Yeah.
next generation of life skills and development with God,
Come on.
because I also see that happening too for the younger generation. You hear a lot of stories, right, of like the teenagers having an experience with God, but the parents maybe haven't had that experience. And then how do you grow and foster those things in them? So we're creating something like that, and it's going to be beautiful.
Yeah. It's like stay tuned next year.
Yeah.
It's already happening. It's so exciting. I love it. I love it. And that speaks to too, like some pieces that we talked about that have been really pivotal, right? When you find your community, that's often where more of your purpose is revealed. Like when you find your people, like your place and your purpose usually get exposed. And I view and I teach that coaching is a calling, just like teaching is a calling, just like being a medical professional is a calling. Like you don't want a teacher that's not called to be teaching. Same thing too. You don't want just somebody with a title of coach that's not called that to be coaching. Like you do not. Like it can cause damage, right? And that's true of any industry, right? So when you find your people, you find your purpose, you're usually called into more, which is like really fun. But what I love too, one of the sections that we've talked about is about the convergence and the ultimate impact. There's something that happens when you can see your life come together through God's eyes. Like all these random pieces, all of these random things, quote unquote, that you like pursued and invested in that you couldn't make sense of. Suddenly God's like, hey, remember this thing? Whoop, I'm gonna bring that over here. Remember this thing? Right. And he starts like pulling it together in a way that like is beyond you. You're like, I saw that all as separate, but you had that all as a plan. You had that all as preparation. You had that all as training. And now this is converging. This is coming into like a culmination point for me. There's congruence here. I'm like, what in the actual? And I can see now what the ultimate impact that I can have is. Like, I am wired in this way. Like, I am gifted in this way. Like, this is exactly who I'm supposed to speak to. And this is the literal vehicle of how I'm supposed to show up and serve them and well. And here's all the tools and all the capacity to do it. And you're like, huh. So tell me too, like you went through this lesson, right? Like not having this like huge revelatory moment that's a culmination of so many things, right? But you get to this place. What is happening for you?
Yeah, I mean, just this last maybe 2 months has been that for me. Like I've been
Yeah.
able to put some of the pieces together around, oh, this opportunity, like I've always been in leadership roles. I don't really see myself as a leader, but like I
Yes.
am one. Even from like I can go back to elementary school and think about things now too, where it's like I was chosen to do these kinds of programs, like going away and doing a for a day and doing like a writing thing or a dance and singing thing of like just being able to explore lots of interests where none of the other kids really got to do that, or maybe like two or three of them did. And I was like, now I'm thinking, why did I get chosen for that? Was it like a
Yes.
parent thing? Was it a God thing? Like, so those pieces are coming together. And then I had a fun realization where I was like, so I actually started doing businessy things in 2012.
Yes.
So that's been on my heart for a long time. And then um have gone through school, gotten multiple degrees, and then started doing the life coaching thing, but I never really actually did it. I just said that I was gonna do it. So I've gotten all of the skills to do it.
Yes.
And now I'm in this space, like you just said, where it's the right community, it's the right fit, all the pieces are coming together, and I can see how all of those skills have brought me to this point.
Yes.
Um, and I'm really excited to see what's going to happen for the future too, because it does feel accelerated. It's like the last year of my life has been not quick in the sense of time, but
Yes.
quick in the sense of what has happened and how pieces have lined up. And
Yes.
I've never been in a space where it's felt like that before.
Yeah. Well, and right, like, because that gives me God bumps, right? Like, because acceleration is always for something, right? So it's like when you're getting healthy, when you're taking a big risk, when you're saying, like, I have no idea how this is going to work, or like, I have no idea where the finances are going to come from, or I have no idea. The only thing I know is like, this is what I'm supposed to do. And you take these risks and you leap into these things. God meets you in that. He provides for that because He literally, where He guides, He provides. And then He accelerates your growth because He's training you up for an assignment. It's almost sometimes too, if we have spent quite a bit of time not investing, we know that we could have, or if we spent quite a bit of time not acting when we knew it was a time to act, like God redeems time by accelerating you. It's
Mm-hmm.
amazing, right? But it's like alignment for the assignment. This is a huge thing that we're talking about right now, but that's what's happening. It's like once you are aligned, then things can accelerate, and then you're moved into or really deployed into an assignment, right? Where all of that makes sense. And so that's really what that acceleration is for, which is really fun. And then you're like, okay, I get it. I get it. Like, I get why that investment was necessary. I get why that preparation was necessary. I get why that healing was necessary, while that waiting season was necessary, while that level of training and skill development and character development was necessary, why developing community and connection was necessary. Like, it all makes sense, right? And when it makes sense, for me personally, that does something to you in your assignment. Like, you don't show up with like, I hope this goes well. Like, you show up on assignment. Like, you show up with authority, you show up with power, you show up dependent on God, and you let God work. But there's not a question. You know He's going to show up. You know He's going to work. And just imagine, because then it's not about you. It's not about even like ego. It's not about trying to get somebody to understand something. It's really just partnering with God and letting God work and letting God bring the answers, bring the solutions, bring all of that. So imagine for you now having this level of revelation and awareness. How does that change you as a coach?
Oh, I mean, it changes me in just the way that I can hold space for people, the responsibility that I take in situations and in sessions with people, the way that I can show up as a better human that I think I mentioned this earlier, like I'm working from overflow now instead of trying to force my energy to be in the space for me to show up as a good coach. Like, you can be in this like, oh, I don't know if I really want to do this. And then
Yeah.
you show up and you're kind of like, meh, yeah, yeah. but like I can show up in a way now because of the healing that's happened, because of having a stronger relationship with God in my life, because I've chosen to go in this direction and honor the things that I've learned in this program and actually am working on putting them into action.
Yes.
I can show up in a more playful way. I can show up in a way that um, feels good for me as well. I can show up in a way that has energy and vibrance to it because I know that it's not my responsibility to fix another human being. It's like I'm providing this opportunity, this space, and this place for us to show up and discover things about ourselves and to step into the future of what God has for us. So I think that that's just a really beautiful journey to be on and opportunity for people to be able to step into when they hire a coach.
Yeah, like because when you are, I think it's always important, right, to vet people. So whether you're going to work with a counselor, whether you're going to work with a spiritual director, whether you're going to work with a coach, like always to be vetting those people, right? Like, do those people have what it is that you desire? Do they have the um, presence of God, right? Do they have the fruit of the Spirit? Do they have, are they actually living in what they preach? Like, it's so important to do that. But once you get connected to the right person partnered with God, right? Like where two or three are gathered, come on, like the Lord is in their midst, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like what happens on your calls is not a normal coaching session.
Right.
It is not, right? And he shows up every time. Like not once has he never not shown up. He shows up every time. And so like the level of breakthrough, the level of acceleration, what you can impart from your own walk with the Lord, what can happen in those sessions. You can break off years of
Mm-hmm.
pain. You can like literally shift people into their destiny. You can point them straight to encounters with God, right? It's insane what can happen, right? But we're not responsible for that in the sense of like God is doing that, right? We're just showing up and partnering with him and getting to witness what's possible. And that's truly amazing to be able to do with God. Like I joke that like God is like the physician and then we're the physician's assistant. Do you know what I mean? It's like something like that, right? But being a partner with him, but being able to receive that is a whole nother level entirely, especially in a season where you need it most. So thinking about loving somebody like God does or serving them at the level that God does, like what a mission, what a gift. And I don't know that that's what I know that was not what people were getting into coaching for when I
Mm-hmm.
first got into it or as I've experienced that that's what I've seen. But when you truly come in with no agenda, but God being glorified and this person being loved well and served well, I mean, God goes to work. And so what can happen is just truly amazing. Like we call them testimonies and testabiggies at this point, right? But there's so
Yes.
many that happen every single week that we're hearing just people experiencing all these wonderful things that they couldn't even get access to before. I've seen it where I haven't been able to have healing. I've gone through healing for a long time, but I needed deliverance from the Lord. And once I got that, then it just accelerated a healing journey, right? So there's some things
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that can happen without God
Mm-hmm.
personally. And so when you can start there, it's like imagine like how different of a journey that could be for somebody.
Huge. So
Huge,
powerful.
huge, 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 huge. So for somebody thinking about the Spirit Driven Success Certification Program, what would you tell them? So maybe they're considering being a coach for the first time. Maybe they are a coach and they're like, but I think I'm missing some stuff, or not even that. I think if I had something else added to my mix, I do feel like that's necessary, but that's intimidating to think of too. Because we can get in this phase of like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm done investing, right? But we're never done investing. But
Right.
you have those thoughts, you know what I mean? Which they can feel very real. So what would you say to somebody considering this?
I mean, I think that if you're drawn into this community, it's for a reason.
Mm,
And that has been very true for me.
yes.
Like from the beginning of getting into Courage Go, what it's been 2 years now, or a year and a half, almost 2 years. Yeah, a year and a half. Um, But that came from a email that I had never even signed up for, I don't think.
Yeah.
So God put me in this spot, and I feel like if you're here and you're contemplating doing the coaching certification, that it's probably put on your heart from Him as well. And I think that there's like the difference if you know yourself or you've been in this community for any amount of time or if you've joined Courage Go, that you're able to discern the difference between like, ooh, this is something that would be kind of cool to like, this is where I need to be because the growth, the development, the pieces that I can serve somebody else from. So it's really like a heart space. So if you can look into your heart and be like, yes, this is what I need to serve people in a better way, then go through the application process, do the things, and it's going to be super powerful for you. But if you're coming into it as like, oh, this is just another certification program, like you're obviously going to get a lot out of it, but your heart needs to be in the right spot to soak up all of the things that God has in this
Yes.
space too. So
Yes.
there's always learning, growth, and development. So I think you can come in it from any place where you are and you'll be met
Hmm.
where you're at. But I think that that heart posture, if you can look inside yourself and be like, yes, I need this thing to serve really well, and I'm feeling called into here, then it's going to be such a good experience. You won't even know what happened to you.
Yeah, literally. Well, I love this is such a beautiful point. Like I love how beautifully said that is. And it's making me think of too, like all of you were prayed in, all of you were like hand selected by God. All of this was divinely orchestrated. And I think you can feel that. So can you speak to that
Mhm.
a little bit too? Like even how you were partnered with your peer coaches and your peer groups, like that was God. Like he can only get
Yeah.
that, right? So like tell me what's happening. Like this is not like a program where we're just desperate for people. That is not how this is designed. We're not into that. Like this is a calling, this is an assignment. Like God is divinely orchestrated to this. So if your heart is like, oh yeah, I don't know why, but like I'm called to this. Like I'm supposed to be here. God is something for me here. Full yes, all in, watch him work, right? But if that's not
Hmm.
you, then like say no, right? Like we're
Right.
good at that, right?
It's
So
not the
like but
time, and
tell
that's
me though,
okay.
totally. Like, tell me though, like what that's been like experiencing this divine orchestration. Because there's just so many things that we cannot make up. Like, only God knows.
Well, I think it's fun because everybody that's in here, they all said yes for a reason, and they are all fully engaged in the program, which is really fun to be a part of something like that too.
Yeah.
A lot of spaces that you get into, you don't have that. You have some people that are really engaged, some people that are kind of engaged, and some people that aren't engaged at all. And so through this experience, everyone is really engaged, and being, paired up with the person that I am for peer coaching is just awesome. Like when I
Yeah.
got the email, I was like,
Yes.
and the same thing for the groups. I'm like our text message group chain is best SDS group ever.
I love. Don't tell the other groups.
Yeah, don't listen to this if you're in the other group. I'm sure your group's great too.
That's so good. And what have those groups been like too, right? You guys get to come together, you get to direct that as you're led too. So you get to experience how God is orchestrating that too. So talk a little bit about what happens in a peer group.
Yeah, so our peer group is really fun. Sometimes we do like a more of a presentation style kind of thing where somebody brings a topic in and they go through it, and then we kind of have practice for presentations for the main thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just us discussing a topic or actually doing the homeworky pieces of the modules together. So we're discussing like, hey, I'm struggling with this thing, or I don't really know how to answer this question. And
Yeah.
then we can help each other get into like dig deeper, and so then we're also practicing using the tools in that way.
Yeah.
It's sneaky learning.
It's sneaky.
um
Yes.
so yeah, it's just really, it's nice to be in a space that's smaller where you can create another community space to actually reach out and be like, hey, I don't get this thing, and then have the support to um break it down with other people's viewpoints. Like I think that that's the other fun thing about SDS is like we're all very different.
Yeah.
Um and creative, and it unlocks a lot of ideas of what coaching could be, how you could structure something. It takes you out of the limitations or the boxes. I
Mhm.
know I've put myself in of like coaching should be like this. It's like,
Yeah.
but
Yep.
or it could be like this, or you could present something like this.
Yeah.
We've had video formats, we've had people do game show presentations, like
Yes.
people do more corporate presentations, and they're all so good. And it just really helps to see everybody's personalities come together in a way that um, creates a lot of possibility.
Yeah, I love. And you guys also get to build, what you're bringing into the world and kind of like be your first audience that
Mhm.
gets to see and experience it. And then you get to coach humans, like real humans
Yes.
in the world too. So talk to me a little bit about that part, because I know that that makes you guys a little bit like, we're coaching really. Yes, you're coaching really. Like, what do you think this is? Like, yes, this is real life. So tell me about
Okay.
you, because here you are, right? Like basically having your own program, your own offer, your own podcast, whatever, like something tangible, right? This is not just intangibles. There's tangibles here too. So now you're coming to the world with that and then also coaching people through that. And you've had a few of those sessions already. So tell me a little bit about like what that has been like for you.
Yeah. I mean, I just love coaching people in general, so it's really fun. But being able to bring in some of the different skills and some of the like unlocking that creativity and playful piece, I think has been really huge for me in this process. So the sessions feel different because I'm able to bring a different energy into that space too. It's like I've unlocked like, oh, like we can do a coaching session, but like we can also go for a walk at the same time, or we can do
Yeah.
these different things where it's experiential. And I appreciate that. And my clients also appreciate that.
Yeah.
Or, just bringing things to people and meeting them at their level and trusting that God has the solutions for them
Yeah.
takes a lot of pressure off of me as a coach too, because it's like my job is to create this space for God to work.
Yeah.
Not that he can't work without me, but
Yeah.
like knowing that is just so helpful, and being able to practice in a different way is, yeah, it's just really really great to, I mean, it was kind of a surprise to me, honestly, the 10 sessions to have to coach people.
Guys have all of the things. I'm like, you just get surprised constantly throughout the
So good. Um, but yeah, those are that piece I think is so important in a certification program too, when you're looking for something, because if you're only practicing the skills with people that are in the program, that's valuable, but then you don't always see how to apply it in a different situation or with a different population, or even with somebody who has less of a strong foundation in God, or maybe no foundation in God. Like, how do you still use these skills and show up authentically as the coach you want to be, and coach them in a way that makes sense for them as well, and meeting them where they're at? So I
100%.
think that that's a really beautiful piece of it.
Yeah, you get to experience like, oh, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. Yeah, like it's
Yeah.
it's an interesting experience, right? And inviting God in, when you invite God in, right? He does show up. And I think what's interesting too, I remember even when I was first exploring coaching, literally never heard of it in my life. It was not something like it is even today, but I really just needed it for me as a human. So like actually take responsibility and accountability for my life. Like nobody's making you feel some kind of way, nobody's making you think those things, nobody's making you do anything, right? And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, like I can either like create this life that I hate, right, with my own hands, or I can do something about my life and like the cards that I've been dealt and all of that and create something. And you're like, huh, that's interesting. You know what I mean? But then I was like, but I really just need this to handle like family dynamics. Like
Mm-hmm.
if that's all I use coaching for, that's a win.
Huge.
I would still do it all over again, right? Like just to understand like how to be an advocate for yourself, just understand how to handle these very real life situations that you're in all day. Or I'm thinking too, add to that, add like really tough corporate or work environments. Like how do you have a voice in those places? How do you confront well? Like do you confront? Like how do you navigate those things? Like you need skills, like you need
Mm-hmm.
training to do this. And so even having a space where you can work through these practical real life scenarios is everything. Because where do you get that?
Right?
don't like phone a friend and get an answer. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're getting
Yeah,
like
you phone a friend and you complain, and then you
literally
don't, nothing gets solved.
right. Right. Or like you're only getting, their level of experience. So it's like sometimes that's the equivalent of getting relationship advice from somebody that's unhappy in a relationship. Bad idea. Right?
Hmm.
Bad idea. So, right? Like when you pray, when you get heaven's solutions for things, that brings a different level of being able to show up in your life too. So I love just thinking about what can become possible and you just investing in yourself because God will not lead you to something for no reason. There is always a reason, right? And if
Hmm.
that's the thing that matters. Like, is God leading me to this? Is his yes on this? Then I'm willing to put my yes on it. Right? If he's not,
Hmm.
then it's no, and he'll lead me somewhere else. But I think when you're moving in alignment with him, letting your yes be yes, your no be no, he always leads you into more than you think you're ready for. Always.
Hmm.
Right? He always qualifies you when he's called you. So you're going to probably feel unqualified. That's normal. Like we joke about the resume. It's like, I don't feel qualified. I don't feel ready. I don't know where resources are going to come from. Do you know what I mean? Like there's many things that you're like, none of this makes sense. Well, that's clearly a faith move. That's clearly
Yep.
fun, right? Like that actually makes sense in the world of faith, right? And then when you do it, all of those things start to make sense. You start to understand your call. He provides resources. He makes a way. He sturdies your steps. Like it becomes clear. And so
Hmm.
a lot of times that's just unlocked in what you've done over and over again now, which is just saying yes and saying yes and saying yes and trusting this process that he's going to show up in it and he's going to give you exactly what you need, right? Which might be different from somebody else. And we're seeing that. Like some people got in for this major revelation, or some people got in for like these tools for this thing in their life right now, or some people got in to like launch this business or add to this business. It's amazing, but it's all different, valid, and fully supported.
Hmm. Yes.
So
Yeah.
well. So
And to
well.
add to that too, like just being able to say yes or no to things, to make decisions. Like there's so many people, and I have been one of those people too, like in indecision where your yes doesn't mean yes, your no doesn't mean no. And being able to use your voice is such a powerful thing that coaching can help you with. And being in Courage Go, being in this community, being in any community that is valuing that is so huge
Yeah,
because every single day we're making so many decisions. And if
so many.
we're not sure about our yes or a no, we're going to easily get fatigued out and just be in this space where we can't make good decisions anymore because we don't know how. And so
Yeah.
being able to actually even break it down to that level of like, this is how to be confident in your yes or confident in your no, which is probably more what people need, right?
Yeah. That's so good. Well, right? Because like indecision is a decision and it's one that will
Hmm.
cost you. And like that, I love just thinking about being a powerful person, right? Like we're not trained to be that. We're not trained to be powerful people, unfortunately. And that's not even like a something to be ashamed of. That's just something to be aware of because much of the world and how it's designed is not designed to help you be powerful. So if you were to just sit and think about that for a second, like what does it mean to be a powerful mom? What does it mean to be a powerful leader? What does it mean to be a powerful business owner? What does it mean to be a powerful employee? What does it mean to be a powerful daughter of God? Like what does it mean to be a powerful friend? Like if you were to just sit and answer that, for me personally, when I've done that before, I'm like, I have not been being a very powerful human.
Hmm.
What do I want to do about that? Because that doesn't feel good, right? And it's like, okay, I think we have to redefine what that looks like, right? And I think it's something that God reveals, right? Powerful people make wise decisions. Powerful people take ownership. Powerful people lead and they lead well, right? Powerful
Hmm.
people are full of integrity. Powerful people are righteous, right? They're bold as a lion because of that. They're not holding back and they're not ashamed. Like they're moving out into the world. They're taking risks. They're making decisions powerfully. So when you're like that, you're like, well, I need help with that because that none of that's been trained, right? Like, so then it's like,
Yes.
hey, like all of those are going to become my new skills. Like, if I'm going to get better at anything, let it be that. I don't want to be better at not using my voice, at not speaking up, at shrinking back, right? At playing small, at making excuses. I've done that. You know what I mean? Like, I've mastered that, and that has caused a lot of suffering for me, right?
Hmm.
But now, what if I train something different, which is really what you guys are doing, regardless of how that evolves, right? And like just holding the outcome loosely for a second, you now get to become powerful and experience what that means, right? And our power is flowing
Yes.
from God. Then you get to literally move in the influence of that, right? You move as directed by God and you watch him show up powerfully on your behalf. And you're like, Oh. Do you know what I mean? Like,
This
that's a
is
very different way to show up. And
different.
then you're like, everyone must experience this. What is my unique way of sharing this in the world? And basically, evangelism.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. So good.
so good. Any final thoughts or anything else that you would have to share? You covered so much goodness, but anything else that we missed, maybe, or that you do want to share?
I think just as like a wrap up of the theme of this really feels like standing in the gap of knowing to doing, right? It's like my journey through this and being a part of SDS has been putting the knowledge into action. And it can sometimes feel a lot safer to be in a space where you're just collecting knowledge. But once you actually step into action, which feels really scary, but it's actually the fun part,
Yeah.
that is when the things that light you up, the things that make you feel alive, those are the things that actually happen to continue the energy and the progress and the momentum. So I would just encourage anyone who's in that space to take one little itty bitty baby step of action today and celebrate it as well.
Amen. I'm really hearing as you're sharing too, and I just want to honor you for this, right? Like trusting God, but also for you, that looks like trusting God through how He's uniquely designed you. So, like, trusting your uniqueness and trusting that you can show up in that, and that will be an answer. Like, you are an answer. The more you trust, the more you see how true that is. So, I just want to honor that you've been doing that so beautifully. And I think that's so healing and so amazing to offer as an example for people because it's giving them permission to, like, how you were made was not random. How you're designed, like, none of that is something that God made a mistake on. Like, it all makes sense. And your unique journey, like, even if you felt like you were wandering, you weren't wandering. Like, all of that was necessary. That whole journey got you to where you are, and He's going to use it all. And so I just want to honor the trust, honor the risk, honor all the beautiful ways that you have been taking all of that information, trusting that it's for something greater, moving on that and getting into the action. Because now it's really where the rubber meets the road, and it's going to get so exciting, and it's only up for here. So well done. Well done.
Thank you.